As of today, the approach is very clear that when the employee comes in, we need to educate them in terms of how important this pension contribution would be. At this point of time, as an employer, we are not even looking at employee level contribution or salary sacrifice, but gradually we'll have to educate them and see that how this. So it's going to be a two-pronged approach. One would be to make them aware that they need to contribute, and the second phase would be to increase the contribution. So it's going to be a two-step process for us as an employer, and that's where gradually we will see that the apprehensions would come in, where they will have to slightly increase, and by then the lifetime ISA would also be there. So they'll probably see that where am I better off being putting my money in lifetime ISA, or should I be? And today the opt-out ratio, I agree, is very minimal, because as an employer it's completely employer contribution as of date. But slowly when we start tapping into employees contribution, that's when the opt-out ratio is where we'll need to really analyze that what's the kind of a trend that we are seeing, and that would probably determine our next step to how we want to actually give them the option of investments at workplace.
We've started doing financial education workshops with our staff, but when I think about the relative cost of that, the number of staff which we've actually put through it, and the number of staff that we still have to educate, I think that's where I'm thinking about what we said about return on investment and being able to measure the cost. So at the moment, we've started offering financial education, but it's a drop in the ocean of what we need to do really going forward. And I think there's a big piece about understanding the return on investment, but also getting everyone's buy-in, getting the senior team's buy-in, getting the managers' buy-in, so that we can cascade that knowledge down and basically everybody understands how important it is.
We're right at the beginning of this journey, and I'd be really interested to talk to you actually about the scheme you're very proud of actually and what that constitutes. We do almost no education at all. We pretty much point people at the provider and the provider's website and say go there. These people are the experts in your scheme. If there are decisions that you'd like to consider and make in relation to the things that you can change around that scheme, then go there. And we do get questions and we field them, but we do signpost pretty much straight to the provider. And it's not good enough. I mean, I'm really clear that it's not good enough and that we need to have a financial education solution. We are beginning the journey of identifying what that needs to be like, what kind of tools we need, what we think would be appropriate. So yeah, it's early days, but the context is that our DB scheme is heading towards final closure, and we're going to have the DC scheme will be front and centre. So we're looking at a campaign of involvement or increasing involvement as our sort of first solution. And while we're sort of getting people aware, I think that's just raising awareness, that'll be our first sort of leap. We'll then be thinking about how we can start a much more interactive education program. I don't know what that's going to constitute now. I was talking earlier about, I'd like to be able to specify out to the industry, that I want a solution, because we're not experts, we need to engage experts, but it's got to be affordable and it's got to be accessible. They're probably the two watchwords, I think, of what the financial education solutions need to be.
And, I mean, Jonathan, from your point of view, if you're talking to employers about what they should be thinking about when embarking on a financial education strategy, what, in terms of maybe segmentation, is it about age, is it about life stage, is it about location? I mean, what would you say is a really solid starting point?
I mean, I think age can work as a bit of a proxy, but really it's life stage, and people need to self-select for that, because of course people, you don't know that people are going to buy a house, their first house, in their 20s or their 30s or indeed their 40s, whereas other people could, by their 40s could have grown up children. So age you can to a point, but really it's life stage that you've got to look at, because when you look at the benefit provision and what they're likely to do, it will be dictated by ultimately their own personal situation. So a lot of the programs that we put together, we look at the profile of the employees as a whole. So is it an aging workforce, is it a young workforce, because that's going to dictate to a certain extent where the weighting, if you like, is going to be put in that program. But it will also dictate what the delivery mechanism is potentially as well, because depending on what profile of business it is, are these people that work in head offices? Are these people that work in factories on production lines? Are they people that drive up and down the motorway for a living? What do they? Because that will all, that will go back to actually, well, how are you going to deliver that education? And then to Guy's point, there's a question mark then around the price of that as well, because there's a menu of options, if you like, and they don't all cost the same. So there's almost like a matrix of considerations going from the live stage to the working environment to what might the delivery be, and therefore what might the cost be. That all has to be considered to make sense of this. So, really, in summary, for me, it's every organisation, let alone the individuals. Every organisation is different, and programmes need to be designed for that organisation based on their profile of staff.